Hello, welcome to another lighting diagram lesson. My name is Trenton Hoshiko, and today we're talking about Old Man in Window by Samuel van Hoogstraten from 1653. As I've said many times before, I love Dutch Golden Age or Northern Renaissance paintings so much. It's absolutely one of my favorite genres of painting, and this one fits that bill perfectly. Before I get started, if you want to get my free Filmmaker Tools template up here at the top of the screen to have all these tools all ready to start your own lighting diagrams, you can get it from my Patreon at patreon.com/TrentonHoshiko. The direct link to that page will be down in the video's description. You don't have to sign up, you don't have to do anything, you can just get this for free. I just want to give that out to people so that they can start using it to practice lighting, think about lighting in different ways, think about how different setups would affect the lighting that you have in your scene, and then communicate those ideas to your team members more effectively. That's something that I think is absolutely so important in filmmaking, is making sure that you can communicate with your team effectively. While you're there, if you do want to join, I have free and paid tiers. Those paid tiers do help support these videos. And I really appreciate everybody who's gone over there and joined already. Thank you so very much. So this painting is really interesting to me because it is so flat to the wall here. And we have this like frame in a frame in a frame. So, imagine this painting would be in a frame around this. And then we have the frame of the stones. And then we have the frame of the actual window. And then we have the frame right here that the guy's head is actually in. So it's this really interesting frame in frame portrait with multiple levels. And I think it just kind of, zooms you in inside your brain and how your brain focuses on images straight to the guy's eyes and his expression. And he has this kind of like calm somberness to him. It's not specifically sad, but he's not overjoyed or anything like that. And I think that's a human emotion that's really interesting to capture, and to have those frames kind of guide your eye down into his eyes is really cool. And like, if this painting is maybe 3 feet big, I don't know what the actual size of this is, but if it's like 3 feet across, then you're roughly looking at it and looking this person from, 400 years ago in the eyes, almost at scale. And those frames transport you into that world. And so while these are usually about lighting and how to effectively light things, there is a discussion to be had here about framing as well, and the composition of your image, and using things like frames and frames. And this is a incredible example, in my opinion. And I think it just is very powerful. And then the detail that you get is really, really beautiful on the beard and the fur of the hat and all that kind of stuff. You actually get this really, really fine texture. Even the rock, even the stones here have such a realistic little pitting texture. And I just looked it up. The painting is 34 inches wide by 43 inches tall. So this is almost scale to what it would be like to look at somebody through a window. That's just incredible. It must be, I probably would be awestruck looking at this because of how realistic it is that you just focus in directly on this man's eyes from 400 years ago. And I just looked at some of his other work. He has some really wonderful other frame and frame compositions using archways and those kinds of things. Really, really cool stuff. Go take a look at those if you want to see some cool frames and frames, which is something that does happen a lot in Dutch Golden Age paintings. Enough about the composition. Let's talk about some of the lighting here. We have a light coming left to right. You can see the little shadow right here, and it's coming at right, basically making a 45-degree angle, a right triangle right here in the window's frame. That angle is not quite 45 degrees here at the top. We have it'd be just a little bit more shallow, so the light isn't exactly at 45 degrees. Maybe it's like 35 degrees or something like that, but it is 45 degrees off of center behind the camera, coming left to right. It is entirely illuminating the surface. The only places where we are getting shadow is at the top edge, because it is above the edge itself, coming from that top left side. So we just want to make sure that we do get shadow right here, while at the same time having the whole face of the window illuminated. The glass itself in the window provides an extra interesting texture with these circles and the glass in between, how that all creates just this almost like swirling pattern. And then the guy is obviously looking through this one kind of portal to see just his face. His face is entirely lit. We do get a little bit of a shadow on the other side, and we have like the vaguest Rembrandt triangle. There is so much light coming into this scene, and it is bouncing off of the wall here just a little bit, so those shadows aren't incredibly dark, but we do have a shadowed side to it. I don't think we're going to need to pull that down, but we do want to make sure that at the angle that we're getting, that we do have his face getting a little bit of shadow. He's looking pretty straight on. And with another moment of research, I did find that Samuel van Hoogstraten was someone who did use camera obscura sometime. So there is a photographic kind of look to this, in part because that was something that he used sometimes. I don't know if this one was in particular painted with it, but I'm sure that if you practiced and painted using a camera obscura all the time, or even sometimes, that would become an element to your work. Just as if I would paint something, my eye for photography would be intrinsically applied to painting, probably even subconsciously. And our other clue for how high the sun is in the sky is the hat right here has a shadow on it, where we can see that it is being blocked, the light is being blocked by this piece of wood right here, creating a shadow. So the sun is up in the sky, but it's not incredibly high. It's not like a 12 noon kind of shadow, but it's not the most steep or most shallow angle at all between this shadow and this shadow. I'm going to say roughly 35, 40 degrees. And that same idea leads us to have that soft Rembrandt triangle right here. So let's build out what this would probably look like. This is a pretty simple setup here. We just have a wall with a window. This could be shot on a stage, or this could be shot at a location. You would just then need to obviously wait for the sun to be in a reasonably correct position, somewhere like this, where we could then have our light falling appropriately. And so you can see how that's roughly 45 degrees and covering the entire window. If we get our camera, now this could use some spatial compression. Like I said, he used cameras, and those had lenses and mirrors, depending on exactly how advanced it was. And so there might actually be some compression in this from something like that. There are certain Vermeer paintings that I love where you can actually get a sense of depth of field in it. But in this case, I'm going to say that if we wanted to go just a little bit more than normal into the light telephoto range, that probably would be useful. And so we're going to put our camera right about back here. We do want to make sure that we're center framed with the window, of course. And this is the simplest way to do this. If you needed to, you could take a bounce card and put it on the other side to just push a little bit of light back in here, but then you might lose how the light works on this face. It might bring up the highlights on this just a little bit too much. But if you need it, you need it, and you can use something like a bounce card to just bring that back in on the face. I do think that the color of the stone here helps with lightening that shadow. And so this is the cheapest, maybe not the most time friendly, because you have to wait for the sun to be in the exact spot, but this one is essentially free. But now, what if you don't want to use the sun? So you would need a large lamp. How the lamp would work for this would really depend on the power of the lamp that you have at hand. I would say that this is a hard shadow right there, so you want to be using something that has capable of creating harder light. I would not use something like a soft box or an octabox with this. And a really large LED panel would probably be less effective than a monolight head or a lamp that has a Fresnel on it. I'm going to put a Fresnel on this to help focus our light some and make sure it's still quite hard, because we are getting that, and this is supposed to be like sunlight, and I think Fresnels do a really good job of making light look like sunlight, partly because of how it focuses the beam. We still want this to cast all the way across the window, of course. If it didn't, then we would have fall off. We want the tone to be very even on the stone. The only place we're really getting shadow, like I said, is this top edge right here, and just a little bit on his hat. And so you could do something like this. You would maybe need an upwardsly powerful light to manage this. If you are outside and potentially competing with the sun, even if the sun is just over on the left side here, you would probably then need some big diffusion material to make this very even light from the sun, and then be able to use your Fresnel to actually do the shaping of the light here. For our intents and purposes right now, I'm going to just say that we're shooting this on a stage so that the conversation is a little bit easier. But if you were going to shoot this outside, you would probably need, a 6x6 or a 12x12 level of diffusion to go behind this light, soften everything so that when you have your Fresnel here, it's actually shaping the light in the way that you want it to be. That Fresnel will help with these little details, these small micro shadows within the pitted rock, and the glare and reflections off of the glass elements here. And at the same time, I'm gonna keep my bounce, because in real life outside, light is bouncing everywhere all the time. You're almost always having fill light just from the ambient nature of the entire sky being illuminated, clouds, light bouncing off of the white colored house next to you, or off of a gray concrete, sidewalk that you're on, whatever it looks like. So you are not having the shadow be incredibly dark. So that's why I'm saying that if we have a little bit of bounced light, that's probably best, even though we do want the main key area to be very hard light. And this light is going to be just a little bit up, probably about 35 degrees, like I said, but we are still keeping it 45 degrees to our subject. The inside here does have some, shape and brightness to it. So let's talk about just putting some light in the back behind our subject here, so that we have, something. I do think that light would be coming in this window. We don't know if there's any other windows in the space, or if there's candlelight or anything like that. And while it's mostly obscured and mostly darker, especially darker compared to his face, I think that we can do something like take a lamp on the inside here and bounce it off of the wall or the ceiling, and then that would illuminate the room. But basically, if we had that just kind of right around here, bouncing off the wall, casting in the room with its bounced light, it would illuminate the space behind him, give some of that light back through the window, but not look like there's a completely other source, because functionally to the viewer, the light is coming from the same side of the room as the window. If you are doing this and you wanted to just be a little softer and a little bit more forgiving in terms of this shadow, what you could also do is take a silk and place that in front of the Fresnel. I'm not going to do that for, my diagram here, but that is another option that you have, is just putting a silk right there. And that way it just makes the light ever so slightly softer. You will lose some of the hardness of the shadow, but you might get this more of a soft shadow look up here. But by and large, this is how I would light something like this. If you don't have a Fresnel, you could just use a hood, but I would then definitely put a little bit of diffusion right on the front of the hood to reduce the multi-shadow effect. The multi-shadow effect looks much more artificial and wouldn't be mimicking sunlight in the same way. So you want to reduce the multi-shadow effect while retaining as much hardness as possible. So you put that right on the end of the hood, and move that light just back ever so slightly. So you might need a more powerful lamp. So these are all considerations that we're making based upon our budget, access to equipment, and crew availability for, the labor of setting these things up that we do have. And then obviously the story itself that we're trying to tell. The lighting setup here is relatively simple, but what it's doing is helping narrow our view down through those various frames right to our subject's eyes. And we want to make sure that no matter how our lighting is working, whether or not we're using the sun, whether or not we have the sun and then we're, softening that with, some sort of diffusion material, and then having a Fresnel and lamp lighting it because we're outside, or if we're on a sound stage and we are using just the Fresnel, to illuminate this, whatever we're doing with it, our focus is on the subject's eyes. That's the most important thing here, as they look and make eye contact with the viewer, almost staring into your soul across time and space. We want to make sure that we're getting those whites of the eyes right there. We want to make sure that we can see that catch light, which would be the Fresnel in our case. And you can kind of see that angle. It's at the top left, coming down just like this, like we've been talking about. We need to get that, and we need to be able to see the wrinkles on this guy's face, and we need to see the detail of his beard. And so those things are the character of this portrait. That's all supplemented by the character and the texture of all of the space around it, even though it's acting mostly as a frame. And so when we're lighting this, yes, it's a relatively simple setup, but if you have this Fresnel, over here, and it's coming and cutting across much more, and we're completely darkening the shadow on the left side of his face, then we're kind of missing the mark because we wouldn't be able to see that eye. We need to make the eye contact with this subject to replicate this kind of thing. That's the important part. The face is our subject ultimately. And those other frames, no matter how detailed with these pits or ornate with the window and the glass, our subject is the face, and we're trying to lead the eye through our lighting and composition to the face. So I just went ahead and made that other option here, which would be the lamp with the hood and then silk right on the end of the hood to maximize the sharpness while also reducing the multi-shadow effect. This would be the cheapest design option here. This would be the cheapest in terms of just using the sun, but it's a little bit more difficult to plan and set up in terms of where the sun's position is going to be and controlling variables for it. And then we have the most controlled option here, which could be done inside or outside. If you are doing it outside, you do need to probably diffuse the sunlight so that you can control and make your own. If you are doing this inside on a stage, this is a relatively simple setup. Both of these are relatively simple setups. This one will probably be a little more accurate to your reference material. This is truly such a gorgeous painting to me. You can probably tell how glowing I feel about it because, man, I love Dutch Golden Age art. But then again, I love pretty much all art as well. As I said at the beginning, if you want to get my free Filmmaker Tools template up here, it is available on my Patreon. That link is down in the video's description. If you liked this video, please give it a like. That really helps me reach new viewers using the YouTube algorithm if they like these kinds of videos as well. If you do go get my template or use it or have it work out for you on a project, tell me in the comments down below. I love to hear people's success stories. And the whole reason I'm putting it out there for free is to help people out in making and communicating their ideas to their teams. If you want to see more lighting diagrams or cinematography videos that talk about micro-budget filmmaking, lighting, and cinematography, you can subscribe. I have lots of really great stuff coming out really soon, including some DIY builds. If you want to support my lighting diagrams and cinematography lesson videos, you can go to my Patreon. I have free and paid tiers. The paid tiers just start at $2. The free tier notifies you when I post new videos, which is really helpful because YouTube subscription boxes don't always work perfectly. If you want to pick up the kinds of equipment that we've been talking about here, I have affiliate links down in the video's description that help support this channel at no extra cost to you. This week, take care of yourselves. Take care of people around you, take care of your community. Try to go out of your way to do something kind for somebody because I know there's lots of bad things happening in the world right now and we all need to be there for each other. Most of all, I hope you have a wonderful week ahead of you. Peace.